I kissed my stepson, not a motherly peck, but a passionate embrace that shattered every boundary I thought I'd never cross. From that moment, our lives spiraled into a whirlwind of desire, guilt, and inevitable heartbreak. This is my confession, how a single moment of weakness led to a relationship that threatened to destroy us both. The night my husband left for his business trip, an unfamiliar tension filled our home. Chet and I found ourselves alone, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. I busied myself in the kitchen, trying to ignore the way my heart raced when I heard his footsteps approaching. "Hey Jessica, need any help?" Chet's voice startled me. I turned, and my breath caught in my throat. When had he grown so tall? His shoulders seemed broader, his jawline more defined. I felt a flutter in my stomach that I immediately tried to squash. "No, I'm fine," I replied, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. "Just making some snacks." As I watched Jet grab a glass from the cupboard, I couldn't help but notice how his t-shirt clung to his muscular frame. A wave of guilt washed over me. This was my stepson, for heaven's sake. I should be thinking about his college applications, not admiring his physique. The internal struggle was maddening. On one hand, I felt protective, wanting to nurture and guide him as I always had. On the other, there was this undeniable pull, a forbidden attraction that made my skin tingle when he was near. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling. "Wanna watch a movie?" Jet's suggestion broke through my spiraling thoughts. I nodded, perhaps too eagerly, grateful for the distraction. As we settled on the couch, I was acutely aware of the small space between us. It felt charged, like a live wire waiting to spark. We chose a film, some action flick I couldn't focus on. My mind was too preoccupied with the warmth radiating from Jet's body, so close to mine. Halfway through the movie, I realized we had both shifted. Our shoulders were touching now, a small but significant boundary crossed. I should have moved away, but I didn't. Instead, I allowed myself to relax into the contact, savoring the closeness I knew I shouldn't crave. As the credits rolled, a sense of unease settled over me. Something had changed between us, subtle but undeniable. I stood up quickly, mumbling about needing to clean up. But as I retreated to the kitchen, I could feel Jet's eyes on me, and I knew this was only the beginning. Have you ever experienced a moment so powerful it feels like time itself has stopped? As I turned to face Jet, the world around us seemed to fade away, leaving only the thundering of my heart and a decision that would alter the course of both our lives forever. The air in the room felt electric, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. As we continued watching the movie, I found myself hyper-aware of Jet's presence beside me. The warmth of his body, the subtle shift of his weight on the couch. Every tiny movement sent a shiver through me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of these new, confusing feelings. I told myself it was just loneliness, the absence of my husband making me crave connection. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. There was an undeniable pull towards Jet, a desire that both thrilled and terrified me. Without thinking, I reached for the bowl of popcorn between us. Our hands brushed, and in that instant, a jolt of electricity coursed through my body. I looked up, meeting Jet's eyes, and saw my own surprise and longing reflected there. Time seemed to slow as I leaned in, closing the gap between us. My lips met his, soft and hesitant at first, then with growing intensity. It was wrong, so terribly wrong. But in that moment, it felt like the most right thing in the world. When we finally broke apart, reality came crashing back. Shock registered on Jet's face, mirroring the turmoil I felt inside. Guilt and excitement warred within me, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure Jet could hear it. I'm sorry, I stammered, not sure if I meant it. Jet just stared, his expression a mix of confusion and something else I couldn't quite name. We sat in silence, the weight of what had just happened hanging heavy between us. I knew I should say something, explain myself, set boundaries, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself reliving the kiss, the softness of Jet's lips, the way his hand had instinctively moved to my waist. We sat in silence, the weight of what had just happened hanging heavy between us. I knew I should say something, explain myself, set boundaries, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself reliving the kiss, the softness of Jet's lips, the way his hand had instinctively moved to my waist. I stood abruptly, muttering an excuse about needing some air. As I walked away, I could feel Jet's eyes on me, filled with questions I wasn't ready to answer. I knew we needed to talk about this, to address the line we had crossed. But not yet. Not when the memory of his touch still lingered on my skin, promising a forbidden future I both craved and feared. They say the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. As I stood there in the darkness, I began weaving a tapestry of justifications for what had just happened and what I knew would happen next. Little did I know, this web of deceit would soon entangle us both, leaving us gasping for air. In the days that followed, Jet and I fell into a rhythm of stolen glances and secret touches. Every moment alone became an opportunity, a chance to explore this newfound passion. The thrill of our forbidden encounters was intoxicating, each stolen kiss more intense than the last. But with every embrace, the weight of guilt grew heavier on my shoulders. I started noticing changes in Jet. He became more withdrawn from his friends, spending more time at home. I told myself it was just a phase, that he was maturing. But deep down, I knew I was the cause. Our secret was isolating him, and I was too selfish to put a stop to it. As time went on, I found myself becoming emotionally dependent on Jet. His presence filled a void I hadn't even realized was there. I craved his attention, his touch, his validation. It was as if I was addicted to the very thing that was slowly destroying us both. The depth of our entanglement became clear one afternoon when I overheard Jet talking to his friend Bryson. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but his words stopped me in my tracks. It's like I can't stop, but I don't even know if I want it anymore. Jet confessed, his voice heavy with frustration. She's always there, always everything. I can't breathe. His words were like a knife to my heart. I had become the villain in his story, the one trapping him in a situation he couldn't escape. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. What we had wasn't love or even desire anymore. It was a toxic cycle of dependence and secrecy. As I stood there, hidden from view, the full weight of my actions came crushing down. I had rationalized every step of our relationship, convincing myself that what we had was special, different. But hearing Jet's pain, his confusion, I couldn't deny the truth any longer. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and the damage I'd caused was far greater than I'd ever imagined. Have you ever had a moment where your entire worldview shifts, leaving you feeling like a stranger in your own skin? As I lay awake that night, wrestling with the consequences of my choices, I understood that I was about to embark on the most painful process of self-reflection I'd ever experienced. Jet's words echoed in my mind, each repetition a dagger to my heart. I can't breathe, he had said. Those 3 simple words shattered the illusion I had carefully constructed. I wasn't his savior or his lover, I was his tormentor. The realization hit me with such force that I felt physically ill. As dawn broke, I knew what I had to do. With trembling hands, I took out a pen and paper. Writing that letter was the hardest thing I've ever done. Each word was a confession, an acknowledgement of the trust I had betrayed. I crossed lines that never should have been crossed. I wrote, and in doing so, I took away something I can never give back, your trust. Tears blurred my vision as I poured out my remorse onto the page. The emotions that washed over me as I wrote were overwhelming. Guilt, shame, and a deep, aching sadness threatened to drown me. But beneath it all was a glimmer of something else. Hope. Hope that by facing my actions head-on, I could begin to make amends. As I finished the letter, I knew that giving Jet space was crucial. He needed time to heal, to find himself again without my suffocating presence. The thought of not seeing him, not being near him, was painful. But for the first time in months, I was putting his needs before my selfish desires. With a heavy heart, I placed the letter on Jet's desk. Would he read it? Would he ever forgive me? I had no answers, only the knowledge that this was the first step on a long, difficult road to healing for both of us. As I closed his door behind me, I felt a mix of regret and hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was finally facing the truth of what I had done. It was time to let Jet go, to give him back the freedom I had taken. And in doing so, maybe I could find a way to forgive myself too. The journey to healing for both Jet and me has been long and arduous. Every day brings new challenges, but also opportunities for growth and understanding. I've learned that maintaining healthy boundaries isn't just about physical space. It's about emotional respect and honoring the trust others place in us. Looking back, I see how easily lines can blur when we're not vigilant. It's a sobering reminder that our actions have far-reaching consequences, often affecting those we care about most deeply. The guilt I carry is a heavy burden, but it also serves as a constant reminder to do better, to be better. I urge anyone reading this to take a hard look at their own relationships. Are you respecting the boundaries that keep those connections healthy? It takes courage to face our mistakes, but it's in that vulnerability that we find true strength and the path to redemption.